So, welcome, Jess Piper and Mary Darling. I am thrilled to death to have you both here this evening. You are both my sheroes, and it just gives me so much joy to be talking to the two of you. One of my goals for this conversation is to show ways first of all, you organize in such different areas in rural Missouri and down near the border in southern Arizona. Vastly different areas. So I want to find out what are some of the similarities and also what are the differences in the areas that you travel so widely in. Um, my other goal is to really dig down into why rural organizing is so incredibly important. Every election, I see, people wringing their hands. It's like we should have done a better job, or we should have done any job at all in rural spaces. And yet the lessons are continually forgotten. So, where we're going to start out is asking each of you for I love to know the journeys that people take to get to where we are here this evening and the work that you do. So, Mary, why don't you start out and talk a little bit about what brought you into the type of work that you're doing and what your background is?
Thank you, Kathy. Hey, Jess. Hey, everyone. I really see some of my most favorite people in the world on this call. So thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you, Kathy, as always, for the work that Civic Engagement does. I am so grateful that y'all are doing the work. Um, yeah, my professional background was hotel management. I managed hotels. And that's what I did here in America. And then my husband and I were sailing, and we ended up in the French Polynesian Islands. We um, did a short assignment there, and then we ended up in Bali. And I managed a small hotel, and then we did a bunch of business work, and then I went back into hotels out of spa management and spa business development. So through that experience is being in, frankly, rural and remote areas. Basically, you're on your own. You have to figure out and you have to plan ahead, and things happen and be prepared. Um, when I came back to America, um, my mom and I had bought a home in Nogales. I'm literally in that house. We are 4 blocks from the DeConcini port of entry or the pedestrian crossing downtown Nogales. And no, it is not scary. And no, it is not hyper dangerous. Let me say that. My back door is open, the screen door is locked, and I'm enjoying the evening light. Um, so I was really fortunate to be in this rural border community, and it is a community. I have told many people if I didn't know better, I would have sworn I was in Mayberry RFD. This is this type of small town, small community. And I'm very grateful for that. And I think it's important to be here. So that is my journey to get here, the short version. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mary. What about you, Jess?
Hi, everybody. My name is Jess Piper. I have been summoned here from the cornfields and the bean fields of Northwest Missouri, where it's much cooler than it is where Mary is. Thanks for my Diet Coke. Uh, I was a teacher for 16 years, and I never planned to run for office. I never planned to do any of this. I was just floating through the Obama administration, and then Trump happened. And like a lot of people, it, jarred me awake. So I started paying more attention and seeing what was going on. Of course, I already knew what was going on because I was a teacher and I had seen the defunding in Missouri schools. I had seen us falling to 4 days a week. 30% of our schools are 4 days a week. So Missouri passed an abortion ban in 2018. I was really pissed about it, but I still didn't run. And a lot of people, I've said this many times, but it's pretty shocking to people. Missouri is one of 4 states where teachers can't run for office without stepping away from their job. And so even after the abortion ban, I kept teaching because I'm not independently wealthy. 2020 came, I went to go vote for Joe Biden, and there were no Democrats running down ballot. And that's what I thought. It's enough. It's enough because there are people I'm sure that are in this chat. There are people who understand this, but people look at people like me and go, well, you get what you vote for. And I'm just like, I don't have anyone to vote for. And so that made me run. I lost. I got my butt kicked, but I learned a whole lot of things. And I realized that we have to support those down ballot candidates, that people aren't sending, they're not funding. So these people, don't have access to gas money, much less money for signs and things like that. So now I'm the executive director of Blue Missouri, and I raise money for those candidates that are running in the reddest, toughest, most difficult races across the state. A lot of these races, are they going to win? Probably not. Is it worth it? Hell yeah, because that's how we build a bench. And so that was my villain origin story.
I love that, and I think there's a special place in heaven for people who run, who have the courage and guts to run in rural red areas where they know the odds are against them. Um, Mary, what are your feelings about how do we inspire people to run in areas and I should say in Cochise County, down in your sort of general area? They did an amazing job in the last cycle, very red area. They all got their butts kicked too, but they had a full roster of candidates. So huge kudos to Cochise County. How hard is it to persuade people to run in those areas?
Really, it super difficult. Um, so the last few years, I had transitioned into the political world and learned a lot. And one of those learnings, if you will, was how difficult it is to overcome fear. And whether you're in a rural or red community, it's overcoming fear. And so that fear factor of running, talking in public, of spending money, of figuring out what to do with your life while you're running, all of those things contribute to the I can't run for office. And so doing some of this work, it's in partnership. And so the work that I was doing was really working with the 15 counties in Arizona and by extension, collaborating with national partners or local partners and working as a collaborative group to identify and recruit folks to run, being clear about what positions are available to run, I kept mental track of, okay, this is 2024. We've got what's going to be open up and down the ballot, and where am I going to find folks? How do I talk with them? And it's listening to the concerns and the fears or the issues that are important in a community. I did a lot of work in La Paz County. Similar to Jess's story, there is not a D to be found on a ballot. And then for the nonpartisan races, you really have to know your community to know where those shared values are about public education, for example. And so it's sitting and listening and being in public places, talking and meeting new people, and not just leaping to the opportunity of, I've got these opportunities, you should run for office, and really rushing people into this. And it's planning ahead. So sure, right now, have that conversation about folks running for office in 2026. And I'm not talking Secretary of State. I'm talking school board of, Patagonia, or the school board that's in Payson. These types of races. I know that we will have 3 council people in the city of Nogales. 2 are term limited. 1 is not, will run again. Well, that means we need to recruit at least 2 people. I know the mayor is going to be up. I need to recruit not just me, but partners, and be really clear. And frankly, with all due respect to, I'm sure many of us, my focus, my intentionality is 35 and under. That has been and will continue to be my goal, to recruit 35 years and older or younger folks to get involved in this community and run for office. So that's been what I've been doing. And I think it's really yay for Cochise County. Mojave County did the same thing. They recruited 5 people for Board of Supervisors. That was in Mojave, that was a huge thing. That was a big deal.
Yeah. I definitely felt the Mojave and Cochise did an outstanding job. They put all the other counties to shame. I saw that Sundrop mentioned that in Yavapai, there was not a single um, a, opposition candidate to the Republicans on the ballot. So it's
It's
just
a
very
challenge.
frustrating. Yeah.
And if I may, I can see Laura here. If I can do this shout out really to Contest Every Race, they are one of the national partners that we've been partnering with for a
Mhm.
while now. And I will say that they have been very clear about their mission, about organizing in rural communities and recruiting in rural communities. So um, thank you, Laura, for being here. And really, Contest has been just a fabulous partner.
Mm. Wonderful. Jess, do you see more people stepping up now that since you've been supporting those candidates?
Yeah, when I ran in 2022, 40% of the seats were uncontested. In 24, it was down to 18% of the seats that were uncontested in Missouri. And so I have a lot of people that will say, well, did they win? No, they didn't win. But you know what happened? We got enough people out that we overturned an abortion ban. We got enough people out that voted on petitions to raise minimum wage and make sure that people had earned sick time. Now, because we have a Missouri, we've had a GOP supermajority for over 22 years. They almost immediately overturned what the voters did. But in that process, they have made so many people mad, independents, Republicans, who didn't even vote for those things. But they're like, but my community did, and they wanted it to, to go through. And how dare you overturn their will? So I'm seeing so many people. I'm in Iowa all the time. I love to bring attention to Iowa because there was a pollster there named Ann Selzer. And I don't know if you guys remember, but right before the 24 election, she said that Kamala Harris was going to carry Iowa. She did not carry Iowa, but Ann saw something that I see every time I go there. They just flipped a red seat blue, a Senate seat, just a couple of weeks ago. And so I see this groundswell of what's going on in Iowa. By the way, Iowa is the #2 soybean producer. Things are
Uh-huh.
changing. Things are changing. And if you don't think that farmers are mad, and I'm not even going to talk about how they voted. I know how 78% of them voted, but they are screwed. They have lost that market. And now Trump is like, oh, I got part of the market back. It doesn't matter because of what he's done to them. So this anger on the ground that I see, and now what he's trying to do with beef producers, it's the only thing I know is that they're trying to do is trying to intimidate people at the polls maybe next year, make sure that some of us can't vote, pass the Save Act so women have a hard time. But if this is a fair election, they're toast. It's bad.
Interesting. That is actually really exciting to hear. I mean, not obviously, I don't want the farmers to get screwed, but I have been watching what is happening, with beef, under importing Brazilian beef, and I mean, just crazy, crazy sort of impulsive actions that do absolutely screw our homegrown products. So that is good. What sort of temperature do you feel, Mary, down in your area? Of course, maybe you could introduce and talk a bit about immigration. You said the border is peaceful, it is
Mhm.
calm. I know there are students, for example, who walk over from Mexico to the US every day, right?
Correct. It's one of the so the street that I live on is downtown. Like I said, 4 blocks from the DeConcini Port of Entry. And every day, 5 days a week, in the morning, and then in the mid-afternoon, um, the kids that go to school at Sacred Heart downtown cross. Not all of them, but a lot of kids, a lot of families live in Mexico just over there, and they cross
Mhm.
the border every day, go to school, and then they cross back and go home. And it is always frankly, it's a treat to see them because we're talking middle school. Um, and it really amazes me. Kids are coming back and forth across an international border every day, and we have concerns across the country in USA about security of kids riding their bikes to school, let alone walking to school. And so this is happening right here, and I want to say it's fine. Now, do we have immigration challenges? Of course we do. Um, and there are a lot of businesses on the other side. So Nogales, Sonora has about 400, yeah, about 300,000 people as a population. Nogales, America has about 20,000. So we have a lot of cross-border traffic of just folks coming over here to work, go to school, go shopping, go to the doctor, go do their life. Do we have immigration and asylum and border humanitarian organizations doing work? Yes, we still have the asylum process, which is basically shut down. Um, we have folks that are doing a lot of project work with some of these organizations in finding and really locating support for folks that are in Mexico that wasn't their plan to be in Mexico indefinitely. So that is all happening. But while it's all happening, we also have increased military here, not in the downtown. They are out on the edges of where the fence does end on the west side of the county. Um, they are there. National Guard is here. We don't see that activity necessarily every day, but we also have port commerce coming through every day. Semi trucks of produce coming through every day. Cars coming through on the train from the factories in Mexico. So again, Arizona, Mexico, our relationship is very unique in many ways from an economy point of view and from all sorts of points of view. So shutting down the economy or shutting down the border is impractical and has this ripple effect for so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
But I am super grateful that I get to see all of that play out and I don't have to believe or see what's on the news to paint a different picture.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help?
Yeah, I'm curious about cross-border commerce.
Mhm.
And I know that in prior times, I mean, it is a huge business on both sides of the border.
Mhm.
But from my understanding, that has been impacted pretty dramatically. Is that are businesses suffering there?
Uh, So the larger, so if we look around, if we think about produce, because that's an easy example, because I was at the food bank today, so food is on my brain. Um, that continues to move, and it continues to move um, regardless of all the issues that we've got going on, continues to move. Now, with cattle, there is an issue right now with cattle being moved across because of the grazing lands and because of the fence itself, and because they've found a small type of worm that they're trying to quarantine some of the cattle. So there's all these other pieces that are affecting this economy, but the smaller businesses, the more family-owned smaller business, that is being impacted because folks aren't crossing.
Mm-hmm.
People, like individuals, aren't
Yeah.
necessarily crossing and coming to go shopping downtown or even to the Walmart that's up the street here. And then folks that are considered tourists or the southbound tourists that go across for the dentists or to go shopping or to go have lunch, frankly, that's been impacted because people are afraid to go over and then get stuck or not have their papers to be able to cross back over.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this other type of layers, if you will, of the economy. But the
Mm-hmm.
Port Authority, there is a very large advocacy organization that's the Greater Port Authority. They're working on the modernization of not just the DeConcini port, but also the modernization of the Douglas Port of Entry, as well as San Luis. These are three very large ports and soon will be larger
Mm-hmm.
to handle this type of cross-border trade.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds to me like it's been a little more resilient than I had sort of had in my imagination.
Great
So,
word.
yeah. Um, the sort of the public spirit around the increasing roundups of immigrants. Jess, I'd like to hear what sort of mood you get. Do people bring this up in conversation? I mean, most of the raids, and I could be wrong, seem to be, at least we hear about them most in big cities, but the impression, I know that there's been a huge amount of fear mongering, so what do you hear about the immigration story?
I hear people that are horrified. We don't see it happening necessarily in the communities I'm in. We are completely ag related, but we live around cornfields and bean fields. So that means you don't need a lot of labor to do it. You need a lot of really big, machines to do it. So, but can you get a roof put on? Can you get your house painted? No. Can you get any construction done? No, because people are leaving. They're either self-deporting or they're moving away from our areas. But when I'm out talking to people, even people who are Trump voters are like, I thought we were deporting criminals. And this goes to a really big problem. Trump told them he would do this. He said, I'm going to deport 11 million people. And people heard that. The entire state of Missouri is 6 million. So you think that there are two Missouris full of criminals in this country? And so that's where it's difficult. And that's where we have to get out, why we have to have candidates talking to people, knocking doors to everyone and saying there are not 11 million undocumented criminals in this country. So if he tells you that number, you should realize that it's going to be people who are taking their children to work or to school, people who are at Home Depot picking up lumber to go to work, people who pay taxes, people who have been in this country for 20 years and raised their children here. So there is a disconnect. And now people I know personally that voted for him, they're like, I didn't know. And it's like, well, you should have, but
Yeah.
if you're upset about it, then come on, right? And we'll do something different. But like I always say when I go out, I mean, if you look like me, if you're this color, get in the way, throw sand in the gear. Do not let masked, armed men with no warrants, with no badges, with, no authority to come and kidnap people from your community. Do something about it. And we're seeing people do with that. I mean, we are. And so I think this is a big issue. I can't get on social media without being bombarded with these videos of children screaming for their mothers as they are dragged out of the car. And I think that is a bridge too far. And I think every single person that I know that has an ounce of empathy, this is hurting them.
Hmm. Yeah, and I know everyone says it will get worse before it gets better, and I do believe that. But my thought is that it will backfire because of that sort of cruelty, frankly. I mean, it is just cruelty.
Yeah.
I mean, we're so far beyond just splitting up families. It's horrific. So, Jess, what what do you hear most about when you go to community gatherings? And I know I follow your Substack, and hope we can drop that link. You write so beautifully about the communities that you visit, the people who come. What are you hearing? What is it like for you?
I think people in rural spaces are really tired of looking like we're the problem. And how can you get around that? I mean, I ran for office and only a quarter of the people voted for me. But again, a lot of this problem is that Democrats aren't competing here. Democrats for a long time, I think, have decided we don't need rural spaces because we have urban spaces and we have suburban spaces. So we don't have to worry about rural spaces. And how'd that turn out, right? Missouri, because we focus on 3 or 4 races a year instead of 163, we haven't had a statewide Democrat elected since 2018. That's the last time. That was 7 years ago. And so by not focusing on these down ballot races, by putting your hands up and saying it's too red, because you will have the DNC will look at Missouri and go, there's no point in competing there because they're not going to vote. And then the state party will look at a district like mine and say, there is no point in raising money and putting a candidate there. Well, let me tell you what happened. I ran and I raised $275,000 in a race that no one had raised $2,000 for in almost a decade. And because I was there, because I was knocking doors, because I showed up to forums and debates, he had to too. He had to raise $100,000 and drop it in a race that they hadn't thought about in decades. And I said, what if we did that in 163 races? They
Mhm.
can't keep up. They don't have the money, they don't have the time, they don't have the willpower to do what we do. Rural
Mhm.
Democrats are the strongest people you have ever met. I saw somebody say in there, the devil is tough, but rural Democrats are even tougher. That's
Yeah.
God's honest truth. That is the truth. So if we show up, if we give these people the funds to at least knock the doors and have the gas money to, drive I drove 7 miles down gravel to meet one voter one time. So, I mean, if we give people the tools to do that, they will do that. And there is no way, thinking of Missouri, we can't wring another blue vote out of Kansas City or St. Louis. But there are all these people here that are willing to vote for Democrats if we knock their door and we talk to them. And it's worth doing it because it is one of the only ways we can actually claw back, our way to democracy.
Hmm. I think I saw, and I can't find it right now, but I think Lama dropped in the chat, and she lives up in the Verde Valley up north. That just having a competitive race, period, turns out more voters. I think she said something like 4%. So that makes a difference, and that to me is where the where it is so incredibly short-sighted not to invest in rural races. I mean, first of all, if you don't start, you'll never get there. And so that drives me crazy. But the second thing is, um, bringing out rural voters gives us a better chance for all the statewide candidates because the people who turn out or who don't turn out because they say, well, I don't have anybody around here I can vote for. Those are going to lose their top of the ticket votes as well. In Arizona, we have all of our statewides on the ballot, not senators. This is the first time in I don't know how many years that we haven't had a Senate race. Um, but all of our statewides, governor, secretary of state, attorney general, superintendent of public education, treasurer. Oh, and our mine inspector. We actually have a contested race for mine inspector this year. That makes me really happy. Um, so,
Great.
Mary, I mean, do you see more candidates stepping up in Southern Arizona or around the state now? I know that this has been a struggle for you for a long, long time. And I'd like to know if you're making headway.
Um, there's so much here, and Jess, you're just singing the tune here. Um, and I think that's the thing. Yes, there is progress on candidates. Yes, there are challenges to the recruitment, to the idea of run, and you're going to lose by less every other cycle. You just keep pushing, keep pulling, and keep doing the thing, lose by less, which doesn't sound glamorous and it doesn't sound like a return on the investment, or at least for the short term, but we've got to stop. And I was really thinking about some of the questions that Kathy was going to pose, and I thought about, yeah, I know why people don't invest in rural communities. The return on the investment isn't there for one cycle. It isn't there for one election, but it will be there. And we don't plan multiple cycles really well. And we don't
Yeah.
invest in multiple cycles really well. So yes, because I think because we'll use Mojave, they had 5 people run. Will they have it again? Odds are pretty good. in 2028, I have faith that they will have 5 supervisor candidates.
Mhm.
Between now and then, so next year, I would hope that the smaller amount of county officials that are up for election, there will be a Democrat in all of them. Or in some cases, we've seen Democrats deregister as a D, re-register as a party not designated, or the independent, which is in our reminder, it's not a party in Arizona, in order to run and win. And so that's a strategy that's been employed. I can't argue with it. Though I think it's North Carolina that they've looked at how are they going to support independents versus in addition to Democrats because of the situation that we really, something Jess said earlier about saving democracy. And at the end of the day, if that's what we got to do, that's what we got to do. I look at our county just because it's easy example. There are 4, I think there are 4 plus the county school superintendent, which is an off cycle, but we have an appointment. We've got primaries. So people are stepping up because we now have Democratic primaries. So that's a good thing. I can only hope we have more of that because people will start to run and know that it overcome the fear of what I said earlier, fear of raising money, fear of trying to figure out how to run and have a family and have a life and do the things. So yes, I would like to be optimistic that that is going to happen. And this is a good moving forward. It was good to have a special election this year because it got people thinking about elections all the time. Because I too live in Congressional District 7, and I think all of us know what's going on with Congressional District 7. We still have a congresswoman elect. And so I think it also got people thinking about elections far more frequently than they would have normally. So that's my
Mhm.
long answer on that one.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. I think I mean, providing incentives, providing support, locally. I think really it's the local residents who have done the
Yep.
work. I mean, they are making the investment. The people like you
Hmm.
two are actually doing that work that I wish we could just sort of free up more national money to recognize that. I mean, not just from the party standpoint, but from an investment standpoint. And it truly is an investment because, as you said, Mary, it doesn't pay off very soon. But I know we had Jonathan Nez running up in CD one, two, I think it was, last cycle, and everybody was astounded that he did as well as he did. I think he got something like 42% of the vote. He didn't win, but he came a lot closer. And the fact is, than anyone expected. And the fact is, you will never know how close you can get if you don't
Hmm.
try. Um, and in general, my overriding feeling these days is people will forgive you if you fail. They will not forgive you if you don't try. So that is just a huge belief that I hold. So I'm interested in some other issues that come up as both of you travel around. Again, I'm trying to get a little more of a concrete sense of how your areas differ, maybe in terms of their concerns. Um, but also, and we've talked about a lot of ways, I think, in which just organizing in rural areas is hard overall. But Jess, what other concerns do you hear about when you're talking to other communities there?
People are scared. They're scared to be a Democrat in spaces like, where I live, where it's, Trump country. But the more of us that come out and say we're Democrats, the easier it is for everybody. There's a huge push a couple years ago, and they were like, signs don't vote. You don't need yard signs. And I was like, actually, you do in areas like mine. People need to know that they're safe. They need to know that there are other people who vote the same way they do. They need to understand that people can move into this area and they're safe. You come into my town, there's a little abandoned cafe because everything in our town has been razed. All the buildings are, falling down. So they just knock them down. There's 480 people in the town, but right when you come in, there's an old cafe and there are two huge Trump signs there. I need my signs for people to understand that they are not alone and they can go down to that little community center and pull a Democratic ballot, because that's really uncomfortable for people too. Because you have to choose, and to say I need a Democratic ballot and have all those women in the community center know that you're a Democrat is difficult for people. So they were scared. The first time I met with, I started meeting with groups, and I didn't mean to be a speaker. I was just a teacher, and I couldn't go back to work. I lost my career because I said that women should have access to reproductive care. I said gay people should be able to get married. I said trans kids should be able to exist. God forbid. But I can't be a teacher in this area now because people will say I don't want my kid in her class, and I'm the only English teacher. So it is what it is. So anyway, a couple of years ago when I was meeting with people, the first group was in the basement of a church because they were scared. And so I went down all these steps to meet with these people. And now I'm going to places in Iowa and there's 250 people and it's in the paper and they are sending out reminders and they are telling all their friends. So the thing is that people were scared, but now I think that they're like, screw it. I mean,
Yeah.
everything is just going to get worse if we don't stand up. I went to a community trick or treat tonight, and I passed by women taking up petitions, people signing the petitions for Respect Missouri voters and to put, to get rid of charter schools and private schools. So people are coming around. They just need all of us to stand up. And I know that Mary probably feels this too, in a small community. Sometimes it's really difficult to do that, but you just have to do it. You have to do it and say, I mean, what are you going to, I've been swatted. The libs of TikTok, that crazy group,
Mm.
they called and had police officers come to my house because, our son had hurt us and all this other stuff, which he hadn't. But the funny thing is, I know the deputy. You can't SWAT somebody in a town of 480 people. They sent an email thinking it went to the police department. It went to the water department. And she didn't even work till Tuesday. I mean, the deputy's pulling up and he's like, "Are you guys okay?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're fine. Why?" So, I mean, it's just a whole different, everything about rural places is different. We all know each other. They know me. They might think I'm crazy because I'm that Democrat, but if our cows get out, they're gonna put them up for us, right? So, I mean, people were scared, but I think they're getting over it.
Yeah, what about you,
Yeah.
Mary?
Oh my gosh. Well, from an issue point of view, education is top of the list here and anywhere. ESA vouchers are evil. I'm going to say it, they're just evil. Um, and so education, defunding of SPED programs, defunding of the Gear Up programs, the grant money is is a problem. And so education's been like a #1 topic, but frankly, in this county, and I would hazard a guess around the state and rural counties, we tend to be the target of mining activity. So we've got mines across the state. The one here is being reactivated. The mine is here, and that has drawn so many folks to the recognition, that's a word, of, oh my gosh, the impact of the mining on what this community is between the air and the water. And let's go to water. That's a common theme throughout Arizona, is the water situation. And so over the last few months, through Indivisible's work, we've been able to meet with Senator Gallego's staff to have constituents meet with, well, Patrick, whether it's in Tucson or down here in the county. And that has averaged about 9 people. And so over the last 5 months, we've had about 45 to 50 different constituents. It's always talking about the mine and the impact on this community. The work that's being done on the border fence in the San Rafael Valley, that continues to be a challenge environmentally. And then there's the water. If I go over to La Paz County and AG May's work on filing lawsuits against the Saudi Arabian companies for drilling water. So education, the environment, economics, so jobs and well-paying jobs, those are probably the three biggest ones I continue to hear, not just here, across the state.
Mhm.
And then if I can just say this, a few years ago, I was doing work in La Paz County. And for those of you that know me, you know how I feel about La Paz County. It was our tiniest county here in Arizona, and we didn't have a lot of presence of the more progressive side of the fence. And we used to meet not in public. That when people did meet, whether it was just a coffee, didn't meet in public. And then we were at one of the local cafes in Quartzsite, and I was sitting with someone, and we were talking, and someone came by the table and said and whispered, "Are you all Democrats?" And we were in a crowded coffee shop, and I was like, "Yes." Why? Because I'm one too, and I'm afraid. And it was so nice to see you here. And it was really, frankly, really refreshing because I'm in a blue county. I mean, it would be difficult to run into folks that are not registered in my party affiliation. It would just be difficult. But there, it's a whole different story. But I thought that was so sad. It was funny, but it was so sad. But over time, it became easier for folks that actually live there and live that experience to be able to be out in public and do the things. As a matter of fact, a group of them are trunk or treating tonight at one of the community events. So I think it does take time, but it's again that fear factor. There's bigger issues I think we have to fear than this.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, fear of sort of identifying yourself as a liberal, I mean, God forbid,
Mhm.
um, is real. But on the other hand, that's how you find your people.
Right.
And there is also, I've been obsessing also about the concept of social proof, which is when you see somebody like you who is doing something, it makes you more likely to do it yourself. So people like to join an activity. So standing up and saying, I'm going to do this. Do you want to come? Is can be very, very powerful. And then just by doing it, you attract other people. And, I really don't see that there is any way to gain strength um, until you stand up and declare who you are and what your values are. Particularly not what your party is, but what your values are. And I think that it's on the terrain of values that you find your people. So, we see in Arizona that that being party non-declared, I believe it is our number one, if declaration. It's our number one
Mhm.
registration here in Arizona. And that really to me is an indication that more people are just saying a pox on both your houses. I'm tired of people fighting. But if you step forward with your concerns, your issues, your values, to me you find so much more common ground. So anyway, that's where CBV is coming from. So I have actually found this conversation a lot more encouraging than I thought it would be. So I'm kind of excited. Let's see. I just want to look at some questions from the chat. What kind of support do you think is necessary for progressive candidates running for local office, school board, or city council in conservative rural areas? Jess, why don't you go first on that?
Well, those are great places to start because it doesn't take much money, if any money. And people like when I was talking about how small my town is, people already know, who I am. They already know my political leanings, but when it comes to school board or city council meetings, that doesn't come into play as much in these really small rural spaces because you have, I mean, you know, everybody knows everybody. And they would know that, you know, I care about education. Am I a crazy Democrat? Yes. But will she, you know, work at trying to recruit teachers and that sort of thing? Those are great places to start. And somebody had said it in the chat, but it's so true. I mean, the Republicans started, you know, before Reagan. That's how they got Reagan in there. You know, I was born and raised a Southern Baptist, and we didn't have any, you know, point of view on a woman's ability, you know, to do her own health care. And then they decided it was a wedge issue in 1978. And then they were able to convince evangelicals to vote against a Sunday school teacher for a movie star. And that's when it started, you know, way back then. And they started with city councils and running for county commissioner. I mean, county commissioner has, you know, a lot of power, and people are like, oh, it's a county position. We should have Republic or Democrats running in these spaces. So those small you know, races really do help everything at the top. So I would definitely say we should have our hands in all of those places. One, because a lot of our folks really do care about, you know, the way cities are run and the way school boards are run.
Mhm. And how do you talk to people who are considering running for local office, but they're afraid of backlash? Jess, I'd like you to lead off on that as well.
You're going to get backlash. But
Mhm.
you need to have a community of people. I mean, I have people reach out to me all the time from all over the country because they saw that, oh my God, she did this, and she made it. And now it's just spring, you know, forward with everything that I'm doing. You have to have someone to model for you. And I know a lot of people talk about, are they a good candidate? And a lot of times you just need a candidate. But after that, you need someone to help them. People from St. Louis would send me, you know, talking points. And I'm like, friend, that's not going to work here. It is absolutely not going to work out here at 480 people, right? I was knocking doors one time for Claire McCaskill, the first doors that I ever knocked in 2018. And there were some, and this is what you should know about rural spaces too, while we're on the topic. Sorry, I'm going somewhere
Okay.
else. A lot of times the DNC will satellite people into rural spaces 4 weeks before an election.
Oh,
And they'll go, oh my God, those people, they just must be a bunch of racists because we talked to them for 2.5 weeks and nobody changed their mind. And I'm like, you weren't here. And when you were here, as soon as the race was over, you left. So you are talking to people who know that you don't care about them except for a vote every 4 years. And that's really problematic. So we have to remember all these things. And like I said, and you guys may have read this, but the University of New Hampshire said if 3% more rural folks would have turned out in 24, you guys would be going to brunch instead of, you know, sitting on the side of streets with signs. 3%. And that's the lowest hanging fruit. And that's why
mhm.
all of this is important. It's not just important in Missouri, it's not just important in Arizona. It's important to be in rural spaces all across the country because we can win races when we reach into, you know, rural spaces.
Mhm. I could not agree more. Um, Mary, what about recruiting candidates there and giving them support, convincing them that they are probably going to get some blowback, but it is very important to do that.
Um, I think the that's a really interesting word. And I think the blowback, and if I could just use here because it's Blue County, it's different, but then I can go other places. It's blowback of stepping out of the expectation that you're young, you don't run for office, you wait. Um, the legacy council, let's just pick on council, the legacy council people, they one term, 2 terms, 3 terms, they've earned it. Yeah, they don't get to earn it. And so it's having to step out and go out into the community. And I think just the other day, having a cup of coffee with a couple, and they're both thinking of running along with some of their friends, and they have a plan. He's worked on campaigns. He's learned from other campaigns. Those younger folks that are the ones jumping onto cars and going to knock on doors, they've learned a thing or two about running for office and about what not to do and what to do. And so this couple, they have a plan. And all I can do is, what can I do to support your plan? What can I do? What can we do to support what you want to do? And one of their strategies is to really go out in the community and listen to the folks talking. What is it that they need? What are issues that are top of mind? And then strategize how their campaign can meet those issues. They will meet the issues in terms of what they can do to fix them or help the folks solve the issues themselves. So empower the community. So I thought it was a really interesting strategy, a really interesting conversation. And I think that can be applied everywhere. It doesn't have to be a blue county. It can be a super rural one. It can be in a community like, keep on picking on Payson too, or Safford, in these really tiny areas, and encouraging different folks to run because they have really interesting ideas about what will win
Mm-hmm.
or lose less. Let's talk about the lose less.
Lose less. That's good.
Lose
Yeah.
less.
Yeah. Um, I mean, our attorney general won by 280 votes
Mhm.
4 years ago.
Yep.
And I mean, it is amazing that we were able to pull that off.
To Kathy, to your point, and also with Attorney General and frankly the Secretary, and about voter, if I can, about voter protection.
Hmm. Oh, yeah.
Arizona is a hotbed of election integrity nonsense,
Yeah.
just a hotbed of it. And over the last few cycles, I think there are a lot of county chairs and a lot of folks that have realized that if we put a little bit more effort, a little bit more time, as much as we do for organizing and door knocking and organizing and phone banking, and yes, the postcards, a little bit more attention on voter protection, recruiting and building the relationships with our poll observers or with our election boards at the county elections office, that we will have stronger election integrity and that we have the ability to really, again, get those votes counted, whether they're the provisional ballots or whether they are people standing in line at 7 o'clock and they need to stand in line, all the things that we can do that have frankly nothing to do with organizing or turning out votes. It's
Hmm.
protecting the vote. And that
Yeah.
has been a really good shared values, non-party stuff, ability to get folks involved as well.
Hmm. One last question, and then I think we'll close up because we're at the hour. Speaking of values, this is a really good question. Do you, when you door knock or when you talk to people, do you lead off with values and or issues or concerns of that nature? And if so, at what point do you sort of work the party affiliation into that conversation? I think that, that can immediately polarize people. And also, the Democratic Party is kind of struggling with its identity right now. So it's problematic. But Jess, could you start and then Mary, and then I think we had better wrap up.
So when I knock doors, what a Republican want and what a Democrat wants in my area, I mean, there's little daylight between there. And it's funny because when I knock doors, people would assume I'm a Republican. They
Mhm.
don't have their door knocks, and they usually don't have Democrats running, so they assume I'm a Republican, and I can stand there and talk. We agree on schools. We think that our schools should be open 5 days a week. We should have sidewalks. Our hospitals shouldn't be closing. We should have access to libraries. Teachers should be paid well. Our energy bills shouldn't be through the roof. And they'll say, "Are you a Republican or Democrat?" And that's when all hell breaks loose. But just to let people know, we agree on almost everything. It's those wedge issues. It's abortion and
Mhm.
guns. Those are the things that, and I am a gun owner and a parent of 5 children. So, I mean, that's what I would always say. I mean, I don't know what else you need from me, right? So we are basically, except for that, I believe women should have the right to control their own body. But you're right. I don't talk about the Democrats, and I don't talk about national issues, um, because our roads are turning into gravel. And these are the things that are all handled out at Jeff City. And that's what I always tell everybody. Everything horrible and unholy is coming from Jeff City. It's coming from the people in the state house, your state
Right.
representative and your senator. So that's, I always, that, politics is local. It is absolutely local. And that's what I stick with.
That's great. Mary, what about you? Do you lead with it?
Well, go ahead. Sorry, Kathy.
Oh, do you lead with values and issues? And at what point do you
Yes.
bring a party into the conversation?
Well, and I think it's a depends. I mean, getting out the vote is a different story than
Yeah.
relational organizing and talking to
Mhm.
folks about issues that are common to the community. And like I said, common to the community right now, across the community is the impact of the mine expanding operations. That is almost a common theme, regardless of party affiliation. But I do want to say, and this has been a best practice that seems to be developing, is doing canvassing that may not necessarily be a GOTV canvassing, but in a rural red community, it's taking your list and being strategic about who you're going to talk to. Um, and frankly, calling them and saying, hey, this is Bob, and I'm running for, and I'd like to come and talk to you. Is that okay? Is there a good time? And so that overcomes that fear factor of actually knocking on a door, let alone having to talk about party because you just want to come and talk. And that seems to be helping. And we started calling it appointment canvassing, so that you actually can be more strategic about talking with folks in a very certain neighborhood or in multiple neighborhoods. But instead of wasting your time, is really being clear about who you want to talk to and who you want to listen to.
Mhm. Great. Well, I could just go on for much longer, and I'm sure you two are eager to get off and get on with your lives. So, Mary, you first. What do you have any final thoughts or comments before we close up?
Um, I think there's many. I think you're right. We could have this conversation forever. I will say I had been a convert from the no signs over to signs. It's different, and the reasons are different. So I'm glad Jess brought that up. Um, Offices or physical spaces, I also have come a long way on that one. And I think it's important that people can find their people. But I think an office, it should be more of, and I was inspired by this over the last few cycles, more of a community center, more of an open house. It's not an office. It's a place where people can come, younger folks can come. It's really a community center. I think that's important, and it is different in rural. And lastly, there's lots of folks doing really interesting work in rural communities. Um, Nebraska's on the call, and they are my heroes of what work they have been doing in Nebraska. And I am super grateful for that. They've been really good inspiration. And I think we can so much learn from each other. So I'm grateful that Kathy organized this and just how, oh my God, I read your blog every morning and on Blue Sky. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And thank you, Kathy. And I'm sorry I gave you a panic attack,
It's
because
okay.
my schedule is so stupid, but
Um,
I want to leave people with just hope. I wouldn't be here without hope. I would be in Canada right now. I would be somewhere else. But I know that there are a lot of you that are like me, that I have kids, I have grandkids. I can't go anywhere else if I wanted to. And this is my state and country too. And I'm gonna stay and fight for it. So just, join groups, link arms with like-minded people, and just draw that line in the sand and just tell these people we're no more. We're accepting no more. And I
mhm,
appreciate every one of you.
mhm. Oh, I so admire both of you, and anything we can do for either of you or anybody else in on this call in a rural space, we would love to be able to support you any way that we can. So Jess and Mary, again, you are my sheroes, and I am so thrilled to have had this conversation. So thank you both so much. Thank you to everyone on the call. It's been a very lively chat. I haven't had time to read it, but I always go back after and sort of go through it to see what I missed. So thank you both so much. And
Thank you. And thank you, Kathy.
okay, bye now.